We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Chesam and Beis in Meseches Eruvin. This is Eruvin Daf 38b. The Gemara here is in the middle of a brisa. The case is, let's say the Eruv gets eaten after the first day. You have 2 days right in a row, Yontif followed by Shabbos. So now Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is Hareza Chamar Gamal. He's pulled in both directions. He actually has to be strict. We don't know whether the Eruv worked for the second day or not. Therefore, he has to be strict and say maybe the Eruv worked, or maybe his original residence is really where his tchum should start from, and he can only walk in the areas between those two areas, the areas that there's an overlap of the tchum. Rashi here says, Hareza Chamar Gamal Dilma Kchada Kedushi. Maybe it's all one Kedusha. V'kana Eruv l'shnei yom, and the Eruv worked for both days. V'hefsed al payim shekenegdo Eruvo. Shekeneged Eruvo. He's going to lose the 2,000 amos that are opposite, that are away from where he put the Eruv. V'kan lo kana klum, and where his house is, maybe there's nothing. El al payim shayu lo below Eruv. He'll just get the 2,000 that's without the Eruv. But Dilma Beis Kedusha saying, but maybe there are two separate Kedushas. V'lo kana Eruvo el liyom echad, and his Eruv only works for one day. V'dino liyos b'sheni kivnei Iro, and really his city is going to be his tchum for the second day. V'ein lo kana al payim, he's only going to get to 2,000. The point is, the 2,000 amos that's between where he put the Eruv and his city, that he's going to get. But the 2,000 amos, the other direction, if you're going to go the other direction from the city, or the other direction from the Eruv, that's already going to be a problem. That's the stringency of Chamar Gamal. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Yishmael Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yishmael Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, they say, Omrim, they say, Irev Baragla Barishon, if a person makes an Eruv on the first day with his feet, Ein Ma'arev Baragla B'Sheni, he cannot do it again on the second day. Rashi says, Ein Ma'arev Baragla B'Sheni, Ein Sarich La'arev. Again, this is sort of like a leniency. He doesn't need to make the Eruv again. Devadai Kedusha Achas Ninu. According to their opinion, it's for sure one Kedusha, Ukechada Yoma Aricha Havi. It's like one long day. So what turns out in this brisa is the first opinion, Rebbe, it's for sure 2 Kedushas. The second opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, it's a suffix, we don't know. And the third opinion, which is Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Shmuel Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, it is for sure 1 Kedusha. And similarly, Nechol Eruva B'Yom Rishon, let's say the Eruv gets eaten on the first day, Yotzei Ola B'Sheni, he can use it on the second day. That is their opinion, that it's 1 Kedusha. Gemara now says, Omar Rav. Rav says, Halacha kedalit zakenim halalu v'alibo de Rabbi Eliezer. The halacha is like these 4 elders, and it's following Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah. The Omar Beis Kedushos Hein. We hold, according to Rav, we hold that the 2 days are considered 2 separate Kedushas. Again, Yontif followed by a Shabbos. They're going to be separate. You make separate Eruvs. V'elu hein dalet zakenim, and these are the 4 elders. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is one of them. Rabbi Yishmael Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and also Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda Stimta. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda Stimta. Stimta means somebody who Rebbe oftentimes will list in a Mishnah stam without giving their name in an anonymous fashion. V'iko diamri. Some people say Char Minayu Rabbi Elazar. One of them was actually Rabbi Elazar. Umapik Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda Stimta. And according to that version, we take out Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda Stimta. The point of this is that Rav is saying all these Tanoim hold that it is considered 2 Kedushas. So the Gemara asks the obvious question. For Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Yishmael Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Ipcha Shaminu, we just said at the top of the page that Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yishmael Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka say the opposite. They say it is 1 Kedusha. That's exactly what they say right here. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Yishmael Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka say, Ire baragla barishon, ein ma'are baragla b'sheni. Once you do it the first day, that's it. It's all 1 Kedusha. So how could we say over here that they hold it's 2 Kedushas? So the Gemara says, Epoch, you have to reverse what they're saying. They really say it's 2 Kedushas. But the Gemara says that doesn't make sense either. Ihachi hainu Rebbe. If that's the case, that's the same thing as what Rebbe said in the beginning of that same brisa. So now they're not even arguing. So the Gemara says, Ema, you're right. According to this, you'll have to change the text. It should be V'chein Amar Rav Shimon Gamliel v'chulu. Likewise, say Rav Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yishmael Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, they agree it's 2 Kedushas. The Gemara now says, one second, V'lichshov nami Rebbe. Why don't we also have Rebbe in the list? Rebbe also said right before, Rebbe's in this brisa, the same Rebbe we just mentioned, says it's 2 Kedushas. So the Gemara says, Rebbe tani la velo savar la. Rebbe brought that down in this brisa, but he himself did not hold. He was saying that Rabbi Eliezer holds it's 2 Kedushas. He himself doesn't hold like that. Gemara says, Rabbanan nami tani la velo savar la. Well, how do you know Rebbe doesn't hold like that? Maybe these Rabbanan that you're quoting also, they just brought it down and they don't hold like that. So the Gemara finally answers, Rav Gemara Gamir La. Rav just had a tradition that this was the case. Rashi says, Rav Gemara Gamir La Me Ravi Dahanach Arbo Zakenim Svir Luk Rav Eliezer. He had a tradition that these 4 elders hold like Rav Eliezer. Aval Rebbe Tani Velo Savar La. But Rebbe, he had a tradition that Rebbe taught it but did not actually hold that that was the case. Kinach nafshi de Rav Huna. When Rav Huna died, Ayo Rav Chisda lemirma de Rav ad Rav. So Rav Chisda came up and he made this contradiction between Rav. Miyama Rav halacha kedal zakenim. Does Rav really say that the halacha follows the four elders, Valiva de Rabbi Eliezer, Damar Shtei Kedushasein, and it follows Rabbi Eliezer that we hold that these are considered two separate kedushas, Yontiv right next to Shabbos. Va'itmar, but it was learned Shabbos v'Yontiv. Let's say you have again Shabbos right next to Yontiv. Rav says Nolda bazeh asura bazeh, that if an egg is laid on one day, it becomes usur the next day. So if the egg which is born on one day is now usur the next day, that would seem to imply it's all one kedusha. That's why the muksa, the halacha of muksa continues, the halacha of nolad continues from one day to the next. So the Gemara says Amar Rabba answers Hasam mishum hachana. Over there, the issue is not an issue that it's one kedusha and it's muksa. The issue is an issue of hachana. You're preparing from one day to the next. The Tanya, because we learned in a brayso, it says that on the sixth day, on Friday, we prepare for Shabbos. Chol mechen l'Shabbos. We learn out from there that on weekdays one can prepare for Shabbos. V'chol mechen l'Yontiv. And weekdays one can prepare for Yontiv. Ve'ein Yontiv mechen l'Shabbos. But on Yontiv you cannot prepare for Shabbos. Ve'ein Shabbos mechen l'Yontiv. And Shabbos cannot prepare for Yontiv. So that is a completely different issue. Even if they were two separate kedushas, the fact of the matter is you cannot have nolad on one day and use it the next day, because that's going to be a problem of hachana. So the Gemara now continues, Amar le Abaya. So Abaya said back to him, Abaya said back to Rabbah. Elohad, but that which we learned in the Mishnah, how does the person set up the Eruv for 2 days in the Mishnah? The Mishnah said that the person takes it on the first day, stays there until it becomes dark, and then he takes it, and then b'sheni and then the second day does the same thing again. He goes over there, makes the Eruv, and then he eats it. So the question is, hakam mechin mi Yontiv l'Shabbos? In that case, isn't the person really preparing from Yontiv to Shabbos? Why is he allowed to do that? Forget about it. Even if it's two separate kedushas, and you're making the Eruv 2 times, but still, how could you prepare and set up the Eruv for the next day? Aren't you preparing from Yontiv to Shabbos? So Amar le Rabba says back to Abaya, Misavrit Sof Hayom Kona Eruv. Do you think that the end of Friday is when the Eruv takes effect? It's not true. Tchilas Hayom Kona Eruv. Really, the Eruv Tchum actually takes effect at the beginning of Shabbos. So therefore, v'Shabbos mechina la'atzma. Shabbos is really preparing for itself. There is no real hachana when you set up an Eruv. Rashi over here says, Mi savrit sof hayom shel Erev Shabbos Kona Eruv davi yontiv mechin l'Shabbos. When it comes to Eruv Tchum, it's not a problem of hachana according to Rabbah, because Friday, the Eruv doesn't take effect on Friday before Shabbos starts. The Eruv actually takes effect on Shabbos itself. Now, there's a slight problem over here, because the Gemara here is saying that Rav, who holds like Rabbi Eliezer, holds of hachana, and this is how Rav is explaining their position. Rav is saying they all hold of hachana. Rav and Rabbi Eliezer hold of hachana. And the only thing is, it's not a problem of hachana when you set up the Eruv from one day to the next, because the Tchilas Hayom, the beginning of Shabbos, creates the Eruv. The problem is that on the previous Amud, the Gemara said, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that you're not allowed to make an Eruv from Yontiv to Shabbos lichatchila. Let's say you forgot to set up the Eruv totally from before Yontiv, from before Friday, and instead on Friday you want to set up an Eruv for Shabbos. There the Gemara said it's a problem according to Rabbi Eliezer, and the Chachamim asked on Rabbi Eliezer, why is that a problem? But it's two separate kedushas, and Rabbi Eliezer there said it's a problem of hachana. So it seems like a bit of a contradiction. The Rishonim do ask the question. The Rashba, for example, says that kind of hachana in the previous Amud is a much stronger kind of hachana, which Rabbi Eliezer says is a problem because you're making it mitchila. It's in the first place, you set up nothing beforehand. But again, the Rishonim do ask that question. But in any case, the Gemara here is saying that it's not a problem of hachana when you make it from one day to the next, because again, it's happening on Shabbos itself. So the Gemara says, but if that's true, if the Eruv takes effect from after Shabbos begins, Yeruvu belogin, then you should be able to make an Eruv with login. Now that was a case we had previously. The case is again where the item that you're making the Eruv with is a Tful Yom. It is waiting for it to get dark in order for it to be totally pure. And you want to say that when it gets totally dark, when it's pure, so then I'm going to set the Eruv. Then we'll make the Eruv with this item. And at that point in time was when you were going to separate the Truma. It was a situation of Tevel there, and you were going to separate the Truma after it became dark and make the Eruv after it became dark. And if you're going to say that the Eruv actually takes effect after Shabbos begins, that should work. So why doesn't that work? So the Gemara answers, no, that doesn't work for a different reason, because ba'inon seuda haruya mi ba'od yom v'leka. The halacha is you need the meal to at least be fit to be eaten before Shabbos, even though it actually takes effect on Shabbos itself, but the meal does need to be able to be eaten beforehand, and therefore, since in the case of login, everything is going to be taking place after Shabbos begins, meaning you're going to be separating the proper truma, it's going to be pure, after Shabbos already begins. So in that situation, that's not good because you don't have a su'uda haru'uya mibod yom. So the Gemara now asks, Elohaditanan, but what about the Mishnah where it says, Rabbi Eliezer says, Yontav asamach l'Shabbos bein milfanel bein milacharel. When you have Yontav next to Shabbos, whether it falls out on Friday, whether it falls out on Sunday, ma'arev adam shnei eruvin. The person can make two eruvs going in different directions. So that's also a problem. Don't you need a meal that's fit to eat from before Shabbos? And you don't have that. The Gemara here is assuming, as Rashi explains, that you're putting the Eruvin so far away from each other that where you can walk one day, you can't walk the other day. So in other words, on the first day you're going to the east, but your second Eruv that you're going to use on the second day is all the way in the west, and you can't even get to it until the second day when your Eruv changes. That means it won't be fit for you, mi ba'od yom. During the first day, let's say Friday is Yontiv, on Friday, which is Yontiv, when you're going east, you're not going to be able to go to the west to get the Eruv that you set up for Shabbos. Now that's a problem because I thought you need a Su'uda Haru'uyim Mibod Yom. So the Gemara says you're correct about that, and you're actually not allowed to put the two Eruvs that far away from each other. Do you think that when you're setting up two Eruvs in two directions, you're going 2,000 amos in each direction? That would never work, because if you're already 2,000 amos to the east, you're not going to be able to go the 2,000 to the west to eat a mibod yom. No, that's not the case. You're just going 1,000 amos in each direction. One Eruv is going 1,000 amos to the east, the other Eruv is going 1,000 amos to the west. You still can go to either one in order to eat at mibod yom. So that's how you set it up in two directions for the Yontiv and then the Shabbos that follows. Gemara now says, Elohad Amar Rav Yehuda, but what about the following statement? Rav Yehuda had said, Irev Baraglov Yom Rishon, that if a person makes an Eruv with his feet, with his own body, he goes to that area on the first day. Ma'arev Baraglov B'Yom Sheni, he does it again the second day. It's like two Kedushas. Irev V'Pas B'Yom Rishon, and again, if he makes it with bread on the first day, Ma'arev V'Pas B'Yom Sheni, he makes it with bread the second day. So again, now you have a problem. Hakam Mechin Miyantiv L'Shabbos. In this case as well, don't you have a problem of hachana in this situation? Rashi here explains, we're going to say we're talking about the same piece of bread in this case. So you take one piece of bread the first day, same piece of bread, you take it to another place the second day. Here Rashi explains the problem. When you make an Eruv from Yontiv to Shabbos on that for that second day, I understand if you set up bread, you can say that it takes effect at the beginning of the second day. The Eruv the pas shtika memela kani. It happens, you're quiet, you don't do anything, it happens memela. Ela irev beraglov. The issue here is, what about the case where you're doing with your feet? The kash is that we think you actually need to say something. You need to go with your feet and say, here is my mak of shvisa. You can't have kavana for the exact moment of when Shabbos actually starts. You have to make that statement before Shabbos starts. The Gemara thinks it's a hachana of amira. That's what the Gemara's question is from the statement. So it's more from the fact, even though it's not made in the statement, it's more from the fact that it's assumed that if you're ma'arev beraglov, you're going to have to say something before the day actually starts, and that's going to be a problem of hachana. Gemara says, Amar Lei said back to him, Misavrit to Azil v'Amar. Do you think that he's saying something? V'Amar Midi, he's saying something. Da'azil v'Shasik, he just sits there and he's quiet and it's an automatic. Wherever he is, that's where his Eruv is. So the Gemara says, again, Da'azil v'Shasik v'Yosef. He's just going to sit there and be quiet. The Gemara says, come on, who does that follow? That would seem to be that you're limiting yourself to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who says that things that are hefker also are konen shvisa. Rashi over here says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri l'kamon b'misho tziyuhu ka'amar d'yoshen konen shvisaso. The issue over there is, let's say a person's sleeping. Is he konesh shvisa? Is his residence in the area where he's sleeping at the beginning of Shabbos? That's the same thing as items which are hefker bialma, things which are hefker shein adam makne lahem shvisa. You don't give them any real shvisa. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri happens to hold cheftze hefker is konen shvisa. When you're sleeping, konesh shvisa. So is that the same thing over here, that I could just sit there and be quiet? That seems to be the same thing as sleeping. Gemara says, no, not necessarily the same. Afilo teim Rabbanan. You can say this follows even the Rabbanan. Ad kan lo pligi Rabbanan aled Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri ela biyashin. The Rabbanan argue with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri by someone who's sleeping, de lo matzi amar. He couldn't even say anything if he wanted to. Matzi amar. De lo matzi amar. He couldn't say anything if he wanted to. Avo b'neyor, but when a person's awake, the boy lameimar matzi amar, where if he wanted to say something he could. Af agav de lo amar, even though he doesn't say anything, command damar dami. It's as if he said something. Amar le Rav bar Rav Chanin la Abaya. Rav bar Rav Chanin says to Abaya, "You have a shmiya le lamar hadatanya." If the master would have heard the following statement, if the master, meaning Rabbah, if he would have heard the following brisa, Rashi here says, "You have a shmiya le lamar le Rabbah to mitaritz v'ozol kol hanach terutzi." Rabbah's giving all these answers why you don't have a problem with achana here, you don't have a problem with achana here. The kamar demishum de lo amar midi shari. You don't have to say anything in this case, so it's not a problem with achana. The alpha gav the ozol hasam yibod yom. Even though he walked there from before Shabbos, he says that's enough to make it not achana. He would have had a problem. Hadatanya, the following brisa, it says, "Lo yahalech adam lesof sadeh." It says that on Shabbos, a person cannot walk to the end of his field, leida mahi tzricha, to find out what needs to be done after Shabbos. Kayotzebo, and similarly, so you already see the beginnings of the question. Here it seems to be that there's a problem of what presumably is a achana problem, even involving just walking, even when you're not talking. You can't even go to the end of your field. We'll see the continuation of this question in the next video on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph.